Our next guest is a dear friend, a client, and an excellent physio. His name is Richard Worrall, and he joins us today. Welcome to the show, Rich.
Oh, thanks, Nick. You're far too kind. Thanks for inviting me. I feel very honoured.
No, it's a pleasure. I realise we don't catch up enough, so doing a podcast is a great way just to chat. I just wanted to start with you, Rich. What's one mind-blowing fact about yourself that maybe someone doesn't know?
A mind-blowing fact about myself. Maybe I don't always practice what I preach. Perhaps that's maybe but we can get into that later. And I'm sure that'll emerge later when you ask me about.
Oh, let's dive into that right now. What does that mean?
Oh, well, I guess we always, as physios, we're probably the worst patients as well, and always great, very knowledgeable, got all the answers, able to convert very well to our patients, but equally we've been through a lot as well. Usually, sports physios have played sport relatively good amateur level and stuff, and so you've always picked up niggles, injuries, and you know how to. You sort of know your body and you know how to get back to it. So you probably take advantage of that a little bit. For instance, I've pushed myself a little bit too much, maybe avoided the odd warm up and avoided the odd training session or increased my volume a little quicker than I should. But I guess I know a few little cheats to get myself better, quicker, perhaps. We all do it. But equally, that's why I guess it's good for us to know how to help people, and you've got to learn from mistakes, and that's how I've always taught my patients.
It's funny you say that. I had a rugby physio, and he showed up once and he was strapping my ankle and he was like, yeah, my leg's a bit sore today. And I was like, oh, what do you do? He's like, oh, I stepped off the curb while I was running and just rolled my ankle a bit, but it should be all right. And it was like a week went by and he was still hobbling around, got an x-ray, and he had a broken leg.
Doesn't surprise me. Yeah, I'm a physio.
And I was like, you're a physio, mate. What are you up to?
You should know better.
Yeah. But anyway, we'll get into that. So tell us a little bit about you, ad life. How are you fitting full-time physio and running a company with multiple employees now, going from just yourself up to, what is it, 10?
Yeah, employees? I guess you've known me since the start of my business, and when I arrived in Edinburgh, we played rugby together, and you helped me a lot to sort of develop sort of the website and all the social media stuff. And so it's gone from being just a guy in early 30s, develop the business. So the idea was always to try and get as much done before the kids arrived in terms of the business side of things, try and get as established as possible. Now two girls, 5 and 7. It's just fitting in where you can in terms of balancing productivity with business, looking after all the staff and looking after my patients as well, but then making sure I've got some time with the family as well, and squeezing the running.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the running. What's the goal at the moment?
So goal is so I'm doing the Edinburgh Marathon in a few weeks' time. It's a bit of unfinished business. So I trained for it last year, but got myself injured towards the end of the training. It was actually during my tapering week, injured my calf. So this year the whole year I've been building up over that since then to get to this point. So changed my tactics, spoken to a lot of people, done some more research myself, used my prior knowledge, been a lot more disciplined with how I've approached it. So I'm just aiming to just get round unscathed, but just do as well as I can, basically.
Why did you start, or why did you decide to take on the marathon of all things?
I think, well, in terms of like family life, I always wanted to do it, but when the girls were between the ages of 1 and 3, and it was so hard, as you know, like it's a lot of extra work, a lot less time. the demands are a lot higher with the family life, and at that point, exactly the same point, the demands of the business were a lot higher as well. So the training volume was just too tricky to fit in for the full marathon. And I was doing a lot of 10Ks, halves, things like that, because it was a much easier way to train for. And also, I gave up rugby just before, probably just after the girls were sort of born, and gave up cricket and things like that, because time was not my own anymore. That was it. It was just it was the balance. And then now the girls are a lot older, a bit more independent, sleep's dead easy with them. It was all my choice in terms of when I train, how I train. Got a bit more flexibility during the week as well with work. We've also developed a new clinic on Earl Grey Street with a performance gym in there as well. So I'm quite lucky that I can just dip in and do my strength training in there. And also there's some great trainers in there, so I have been tapping into their knowledge as well. So as it's got on, it's definitely got easier, particularly this year, to just develop the marathon training a bit more for myself.
Did you develop your own plan here, or
have
you used a coach, or are you using the guys in the gym?
So a bit of everything really. So I developed my own plan. So it's been a bit of a looser plan for this marathon, but essentially trying to keep each week gradually building the volume, always having an interval session, a tempo session, some recovery runs, then a longer, slower run at the weekend. I was just disciplined this time around, just making sure I'm gradually using that 10% rule, and then having a few deload weeks and things like that as well. And equally, like, naturally going on holidays, going for weekends away, things like that, you're naturally having sort of deload weeks anyway, which is not ideal if you want to, but equally it's quite useful as well for trying to reduce a bit of volume.
For those listening that don't know what the 10% rule is, tell us a little bit about that first, and then what do you mean by deloading?
So the 10% rule it's an old sort of recommendation, but actually the research and the evidence supports it quite a lot. So the 10% rule is simply, as we with any sort of strength training or running, if you increase your volume of work or running too quickly, that's where the chance of injury is going to increase dramatically. The idea of the 10% rule is, if you are going to increase each week, just do it by 10%. So say your long runs at the weekend, make sure each week you're just building on 10%. And the main problem, as I alluded to earlier, is if you run out of time, or you start your plan a bit too late, you sign up to that marathon that's just a little closer than it should be, the temptation is just to go, right, okay, next week, this week I did 10K, right, next week I better step it up, I'll do 20K next weekend. And that is just, recipe for disaster if you're doing that, too quickly, too soon.
I'm laughing, Rich, because I signed up to this 50-mile event in 8 weeks. So I might be coming in and sitting on your physio table at some point then, if you're telling me this.
Yeah, but equally, like, I remember, I hope you don't mind me, like, reminiscing over I think it must have been your first marathon, the one in New Zealand, the Rotorua one, and you injured yourself. I can't remember what it was, but it was probably a bit of an overuse injury or volume issue as well. But you did pretty well at maintaining heart rate, cardio ability, and you're using all sorts of stuff, the rowing machine, the ski erg, all this sort of stuff to maintain your cardio as best you could, so that by the time the marathon came, you dive straight into it. So I suspect that might be a bit of extra for you as well this time around, to boost the car, get the zone 2 going a bit more.
Yeah, I'm looking for a treadmill. Obviously, I'm sitting right now, but I'm hoping to get a cheap treadmill somewhere. And the next time we speak, I'll probably be walking on the treadmill while we're walking, while we're working. Tell us a little bit now about the deloading. Then, obviously, you want a gradual increase, and the 10% rule applies, especially tackling a fast marathon. Tell us a little bit about the deloading and how you're working that into your plan.
I guess it's all about recovery. And this is why try your best to use a coach, so use a running coach who will work with you to plan around what you're doing during the week, how long you've got until the marathon, so that you can, like yourself, like you haven't got that long, so it'd be good to like figure out exactly how you're going to do that, so that you're increasing your volume, but definitely having plenty of recovery at the same time. But for you might, your deload might be more about sort of less running, but maintaining your cardio, so that it's kind of deload of time on your feet rather than less exercise. If you structure the planning well, you can try and maintain as high volume for 2 or 3 weeks, and on maybe your fourth week you drop off your longer run, or you do less intensity. So the idea of the deload is you reduce either your intensity or your volume during that week, and it's just to allow your body just to recover. And the whole point of recovery is it's not just about rest. That is when the adaptations occur. Make sure your sleep's coming on, you're mobilizing a lot better. All this it prepares your body and your muscles and all the kind of cardiovascular infrastructure in your body to adapt. And that's where the following week you're refreshed. All the muscles have repaired and improved or grown or whatever. And so then you're just going to be a lot fresher for the next sort of section of the running cycle. Another time to deload is what we call sort of periodization. So it's trying to make sure during the structure of the running program, you're doing things at the right time. So you're increasing the volume at the right time and having rest at the right time, ready for certain points of your plan or your season or whatever.
Yeah. No, periodization is quite prominent from when I played rugby. We had obviously off-season, pre-season, pre-season, and then season. So they all had their different function and structures and exactly what we needed to do when we needed to do it. So that we were peaking during season rather than much earlier. So tell us a little bit about your routine then. Let's dig a little bit into that, because I know you used to be part of the 5 a.m. club. Are you still doing that? Or
Yeah, I do. So I probably do not as regularly as I did. I'm used to getting up pretty early to train. It's great. I mean, like, I usually 2 or 3 times a week I'll try and do a 5 a.m. start. So I'll get up at like 4:45, get ready, and get out running pretty early. And it's awesome at this time of year because you get the sunrise and stuff like that. It's great. It's quiet, nobody out, no one on the roads. It's it's awesome. And anyone who is out is generally sort of similar, sort of, everyone's quite jolly. So everyone's saying hello, and it's great. It depends on what I'm doing, but if I'm doing an hour, I get back for about 6, but everybody's still asleep, so I'll do maybe 20-30 minutes of work whilst I'm having breakfast planned for the day, things like that. So and it sets you up pretty nicely for the day. But equally at the weekend as well, if that's a weekday routine for me, but the weekend, so my long run, I'll probably do it early as well. So I'll get up and get up at 5 and be out 2-3 hours of running. So I'll try and get it all done before everyone's awake or before the weekend activities are starting, just so I've got more time with the family at the weekend. Because that is the hardest bit. It's just the time.
I attempted the 5 a.m. club early on and just woke everyone up in the house all the time. So, was not a happy household for a while, and realised I'll have to wait till the kids are a bit older.
Well, that is it. That's the only way. I can only do it now because the girls are sleeping well. Whereas, like, your kid's age, any slight noise, carnage.
Yeah, got 3, 5, and a baby. So the baby's normally up. I think it might be easier to get up earlier now than ever, because she generally feeds around 5 a.m. So what I was planning to do is just have my running kit all set up there, and then when she gets up at 5 a.m., settle her and put her down, and then just go straight out the door. That might be a good plan, especially as I need to increase the volume.
Yeah.
Well, tell us just a little bit about your fueling then, and obviously you're getting out early. Having anything to eat before then? Are you going out empty? And what sort of hydration are you sort of keeping an eye on?
I tend not to, because I'm getting up early. I don't think I could feed much. To be honest, it'd generally be like a banana. As soon as I get up, just get a banana down me, glass of water, and I'll have all my hydration pack and everything ready the night before with whatever I need during the run. And I usually get through it pretty fine. And then as soon as I get in, I just nail a bowl of porridge, get some of the protein down me as well at the same time. That just try and get fueled up straight away. So it's not ideal because I mean you want to be relatively fueled up, but it's tricky. Yeah, you'd be waking up pretty early if doing anything. But it's ridiculous how much I eat. It's like anyone just constantly eating stuff. It's just the nature of at this point in time of the training.
Yeah. Are you conscious of the inputs? Are you not worried about what types of foods you're eating? I mean, some people, for example, go for plant-based, and then some are very protein-heavy. I don't know what your strategy around that is.
I'm fairly balanced. Like I'm not. Actually, no, I'm not that much of an extremist in terms of my nutrition. I'll eat meat. I'll eat plant-based stuff. Like it's really balanced my meals. It's probably just the volume of my of the food that I'm probably eating, and I eat pretty well. So I don't really eat rubbish. There's nothing that remarkable about the actual what I'm putting into my body, other than it's fresh. It's fruit and veg, meat, and some extra protein.
What's your nemesis food then? What can you not go without? That maybe either
my guilty pleasure. You know, it's amazing how much chocolate that I can put away if I had the chance.
A bar. What are we talking here? A block? What are we talking?
No, I don't go too wild. In fact, my nutrition during runs at the minute, if I've usually haven't been organised to get enough gels and things like that, and I'll usually grab Haribo's and little mini Mars bars and things like that from the girls' stash if I can, and that seems to be helpful.
Nice one. Yes. Well, what sort of challenges then? Have you found any challenges around the eating and sort of the dad side, or have you found that pretty straightforward? Are the girls good eaters?
I'm super lucky. Like the girls they're good eaters. They'll eat the same meal that we're having, slightly modified, but pretty much. So it makes it easy for me and my wife when we're preparing everything for them. So honestly, it's I'm pretty lucky in that regard. Like it's all there's nothing too remarkable with that sort of thing.
Tell us what your number one meal is. Then the girls will eat hands down. You'll eat. It's easy to prepare.
I've told them about because they're intrigued actually. My older one, she's been out take her for a run around the block and stuff like that, trying to build up her running a bit. She's always intrigued. But I've told them that for the week before the marathon is carb loading time, so they're excited about pasta being on the menu basically every night. So that'll be quite a fun week for them. Nice. Just like that pasta if daddy's having pasta.
So pasta is a go-to. Is that got a sauce on it, or is it plain pasta? What are we talking here?
The filled pasta is always good. That's always a nice easy one, isn't it? Like but I'm sure I'll get some requests in, and the carb loading stage is going to be quite fun. Just lots of pasta, and we'll bolognese it up, and we'll do all the usual standard stuff.
Yeah, is it make your own, or is it the packet ravioli, the filled stuff?
Yeah, that one's not making your own actually. Yeah, that's the cheat version from the supermarket. It's absolutely fine. Maybe that's a good idea actually. Maybe you get do some fresh stuff before that week.
You had a bit of a challenge or setback from last year when you ran the marathon. What other challenges have you faced with your training?
Again, like I was saying earlier, it's always good to learn from mistakes or learn from injuries as well, because it just gives you that ability to, one, overcome them, understand how to rehab them properly, but you also start learning about timescales, what to expect, things like that. So it's really helpful to then relay that back to patients. When I was trying to do the Edinburgh Marathon that time around, I was also playing a lot of tennis at the same time. So I was sort of getting quite stuck into the tennis, and I was sort of committed into some leagues and things like that. I was trying to play that plus increase the volume, and it was a classic kind of calf injury that happened to me where it was just accumulatively building up, and then eventually did a really long run, probably my last long run, and then the day after, maybe the next again day, played a game of tennis. It was all fine then, and probably a few days later I did a really slow sort of tapering run, and my calf just went like about 8k into it, and obviously I was 8k away from home, so I had to somehow get home, and it was in dead early in the morning on a Sunday morning, so public transport wasn't around. Uber drivers weren't really weren't bothered on that, so I was limping back, and that was a bit of a disaster. That was probably 2 weeks prior to the marathon. I tried to sort of get back and tried to let it rest, and the usual sort of things that I would advise to my patients, to give it adequate sort of 72 hours rest, lots of compression, icing it, mobility stuff. And then after the 72 hours, start loading it again, just gradually, and try to get to about a week afterwards, and then started running again. But I couldn't, like the calf just wouldn't tolerate more than, say, 1 kilometer or 2 kilometers before it would go again. I just knew sort of after about 10 days, which is what I usually say to people: if things are not getting better or not feeling like they're getting better, there you're pushing yourself, you're kidding yourself that you're going to be ready. So I had to just pull out at that point, like a few days before the actual marathon. The other classic was earlier on in the training. So say maybe a month or so into the training, I did the old ramped up the volume a little bit too quickly and developed ITB pain, which is another, probably the second most common injury after sort of runner's knee. So they're like what we call anterior front of the knee pain, where the patella is rubbing on the femur. So I developed that IT band pain, and again it was great for me because I was trying to increase my volume. I was trying to like develop, the right tolerance for the marathon, but obviously picking up these little niggles and injuries, it was good for me to understand how to rehab that whilst trying to train for the marathon. I suspect all of that sort of stuff wouldn't have helped my calf in the long run either, because it just wasn't I wasn't training properly because I was trying to nurse injuries all the time. T-band issues are pretty interesting and really common, particularly, in fact, actually for ultra trail runners, probably the ITB issues are probably the highest on the pecking order.
We're talking for the listener, the IT band is the muscle down the outside of the top of the leg and attaches to the outer part of the knee, or the right side, or like the outer part.
Yeah, spot on. Yeah, so it runs from the kind of outside of your hip. So it connects onto sort of one of the hip flexors on the outside of the hip, the glutes on the back of the hip, and then it's like a tendon essentially. Think of it like a long tendon with quite a few muscles that attach onto it, and it's a really sort of strong structure that helps with our stability, and it helps with our stability when upright. It runs all the way down the outside of your leg, and it attaches into the outside of your knee. Normally what happens with IT band issues are the sensitivity or the pain or the problem usually happens around the outside of the knee, so around the structures around that part.
Like, what's contributing to that? Is it the IT band rubbing? Is there problems upstream or downstream in terms of the whole body? What are you saying makes the pain come on? So instead of the symptom, what is the cause?
Yeah, so interestingly, so the thought pattern of it has changed over the years. What you said, like, oh, is it the rubbing? That was that's what we thought was going on. It was like a friction based injury, whereby the IT band was sort of rubbing on the outside of the bony structures of the knee, for instance. The evidence is showing now, and what a lot of research has gone into with runners, that it's kind of multifactorial. There are structural issues, the way we run. The main issue that causes the IT band issues is more volume. It is, generally speaking, when we have a sharp increase in volume of training. So you increase your mileage way too quickly than what your body is prepared for. And also a lack of strength and balance around the muscle groups that attach onto the IT band as well. So it's more to do with that. So it's the tolerance and the structures around the outside of the knee. And this is the whole point of like the 10% rule and adding strength training in, because if your soft tissues are not quite ready to cope with what the intensity or the level of training or whatever you're throwing at it, it's going to tell you. And usually the IT band is the usual one that says like, whoa, ouch, it's really sore, and it's pretty uncomfortable and debilitating. You literally cannot go. Like, it really is sore when it kicks in.
Okay, say there's a dad listening or a listener, he's got some issues with IT band, or they're starting to flare up. What should he do at this point?
So it depends how severe it is. So sometimes when people come and see me, like, the severity of the IT band is quite high, in that they can't even walk downstairs, for instance. So normally what happens with the IT band, when you're going downhill, that's when the IT band is having to stiffen up even more and create a lot of compression and a lot of stability, because obviously when you're going downhill, you're applying another 8 times your body weight to the structures, and that's when this is, hence why if you do way too much, you just can't cope with it. So what we try and do with those kind of people is try and just basically calm it all down. Just really is calm it all down. Try and avoid kind of the kind of aggravating factors as best we can to calm down the symptoms. But if they are training at the same time, just don't lose their cardio capacity either. So a good physio, and this is quite a good tip, if a physio tells you to stop everything, then you probably go and see a different physio. But if your physio says, okay, if your physio says, let's modify what you're doing, don't stop, but let's modify what you're doing. So i.e., I don't want you to stop what you're doing. What you can do, a half decent physio will say, okay, well, let's figure out what you can do, because we've got to keep your capacity of training up, because as soon as you stop, your cardio conditioning is going to come down, your strength conditioning is going to come down. Okay, your symptoms come down, like in terms of like the pain, but as soon as you start again, the symptoms are probably going to come back. So what the idea is, try and maintain as much as possible. So with those guys, what we often do is, okay, we get them walking, if they can do it, and often usually walk on a treadmill, like an incline treadmill, because going uphill actually doesn't impact the IT band at all. So if it's a true IT band issue, walking uphill shouldn't really cause too much bother. Maybe minimal or mild discomfort, but usually get them on the treadmill. So like 5% degree, between 5 and 10% sort of incline, and just get them walking just to keep them ticking by. As soon as the symptoms, say like the downstairs walking, as soon as that comes right down and they feel okay, that's probably a key point to say, okay, right, let's get you running now. So we get them running up on an uphill incline. And if that's absolutely fine, after like a week or so, we then just drop the incline and slowly get them to the flat and get them outside running flat without any pain. And then over a course of time, you start getting them sort of introducing some bit of undulation and just get them used to that downhill impact a little bit more. That's probably the initial stage. Like, just don't stop. Use other things. So use like the ski erg. If they can cope with the cross trainer, use the cross trainer. Keep the cardio going as best they can, whilst they sort of try and rehab the IT band as best they can. You know, we then use a few sort of rehab specifics, and the main thing that we'd probably use with the IT band people are kind of like the split squat. And the split squat's quite unique because obviously running is a single leg sport, So start getting them loading body weight, or if that's too much, maybe support themselves with, I don't know, a couple of chairs or whatever as well. Just take a bit of stress off, and then slowly build up the capacity of the knee and the hip, and also get them doing a load of calf raises or seated calf raises. Try and build up the strength around the hip. So lots of like crab walks or glute med exercises. So developing sort of above and below the joint that's kind of outside the knee. They're the kind of early ones to do if they're struggling.
I guess the one thing that I've learned is having strong glutes, which always helps with ITB and stuff. So often underdeveloped or forgotten about when strength conditioning comes into play for some runners. They forget to just focus on the glutes and that strength. But what advice then? We've talked about the 10% rule and gradually increasing your volume. We've also talked about sort of managing your body and deloading. What other advice? I'm conscious that we've only got sort of 5-10 minutes left, but what sort of other advice would you want to pass on to our listeners?
I think like have a plan. That has got to be a key. Like definitely have a plan and just be as structured as possible. If you're literally just chucking the trainers on and off you go, you're not sort of making an effort in terms of reading kind of using heart rate to help you guide how much intensity you're running at, and looking at kind of, again, structure is key. Just looking at how many times you're running each week, what you're doing in each run is pretty important, and also just add in some recovery stuff as well, making sure you're doing some stretching, making sure you're doing the strength work as well. And also, again, guidance is so important. Go and talk to someone with a bit of expert knowledge about, okay, what sort of strength work do I need to do, and at the same time, like what you're doing during those strength sessions. So the mistake people make is often, oh, well, I'm doing an endurance sport, so I'm going to go do, like a HIIT session because I need more endurance for the muscles. Well, actually, that all you're doing there is you're just loading your muscles more and more and more, and that's not recovery. It's not actually helping. But what we tend to do is try and load the muscles in quite heavily, like try and do heavy weights and a lot lower reps and a lot lower sets. And you're trying to improve the tolerance of the muscles in a different way. Whereas if you're just doing kind of like HIIT classes or kind of circuit training on top of running, you're just overloading your muscles. So I would just be that's the main thing is always the planning, the structure, what you're doing and why you're doing it, and just being clever with your training as best you can, because the temptation is just to chuck the trainers on and off you go, which is is natural.
Yeah. Well, just for the last few minutes, then we'll just slightly tack you're a great dad, and I'm sure you've got a few gold nuggets. Is there one dad piece of advice specifically? And that could be balancing professionally and training and being a good dad, or it could be specifically about what you want for your girls or you and your wife want for your girls. Is there anything that you want to finish up with?
Yeah, good question. I guess for me, I mean, your priorities completely change, don't they, when you have kids? And I guess in the latter years, everything revolves around, I don't know. Yeah, good question. What's improved is, I think my time management is like totally changed. It's interesting when you think back when you're younger and you think you have no time at all. And then suddenly you've got kids and a family and work and you're trying to do the things you want to do. Like suddenly there's no excuse then. You have to manage the time better. That has definitely improved with me. And it's probably, that has improved me basically, because it's made me prioritize my time around the family, which has then made me prioritize around the work and the business, and then that's made me prioritize around what I want to do as well, which is always at the bottom of the list. But it's it still gets done, and it's helpful.
let's dig quickly into that then, because you've just said time management, but how have you changed and what are you prioritizing?
I guess for me, it's figuring out what is important and the overall plan, like where do I want to go and what do I want? And you then sort of realize, okay, well, I want the successful business. I want to look after my staff, make sure they're happy. I want a family that is happy, everyone's nurtured and looked after, and they're all sort of striving to do things. And then for myself, trying whilst I'm still in my 30s, coming up to the latter end of my 30s, I'm also thinking, okay, well, I am actually very grateful. I'm very lucky that I'm still fit and young, and I should be doing more. I should be pushing myself that a little bit more. So it's trying to get all those kind of things prioritized. I feel like I'm managing it quite well, but it's those sort of things. It's having those kind of maybe those three areas, and having and knowing what I want to do with those three areas, and just making sure I can fit them all around each other as best I can. It's the overall goal, and then working the structure around what I'm trying to do.
Okay, well, let's dig right down deep then. Have you been intentional with your wife and written down these things, or these things in your head? Any practical tips other than just using
Not
your
gonna
own brain?
lie, my wife leads the the. So I'm going to put that down to delegation, a clever way of delegating. No, I'm not even going to take any credit for that. No, my wife absolutely leads the family. And she takes a huge lead on what goes on, and I definitely follow what is happening. But I try and help as much as I can, and ensure that I read that calendar so I know what's coming up. Because that is big mistake, not knowing what's coming up on the weekend.
Yeah, it's very, very similar in our household and organises pretty much everything. Then how do you have that conversation when you need to fit something in, like the long run or a business thing, and there's a previous engagement? What's that conversation look like?
We compromise quite well, and we do as much as we can to help each other, and that's where that's where the whole 5 a.m. club came into it, because it was like I have to be able to fit if I want to do it. If I want to do something for myself, it's either sacrifice 3 hours on a Sunday afternoon or sacrifice 3 hours of my own time, and I'll just have to get up at 5 a.m. and just get it done. I have to prioritize like that to be able to do what I want to do, so that I make sure that I'm helping my wife and the families. It's as simple as that. It's hard, but I try my hardest to make sure I'm not away from the family and not helping her.
Oh, brilliant. Well,
Right.
I've got a lot from that. So I really appreciate you coming on. Is there any last things you'd like to say to the listener? For you listening, Rich, where can we find you? Tell us, can we come into your physio once we're gone too far in our training volume? Tell us where.
Yeah, that's it. You can find me. So we're Edinburgh Sports and Spinal Physiotherapy. So you can search us online or on Google, or the website's Physiotherapists Edinburgh. Just Google Edinburgh Sports and Spinal Physio. We've got a great team of sports physios, really experienced in different areas. So there's plenty. I've managed to create a decent team of people specifically for running, post-op physios, shoulder specialists, spine specialists. So we've got a good team, and like I say, we're associated and collaborate with some good strength coaches as well. G2G coaching have a performance gym that we're a part of, and we get a chance to use.
For you, the listener, we also, if you want to find out a bit more and talk to Rich directly, he's also in our Ultra Dad free community. So that's our Ultra Dad community. There'll be a link in the show notes if you want to see what's in there, what resources, what videos what sort of exercises you can be doing if you've got an injury. Rich is quite prominent in there, and he's also helped us develop some resources for you to consume as well. So for you, the listener, I hope you enjoyed it, Rich. I certainly did. It's a pleasure to catch up with you for a solid hour, finally, uninterrupted. I really appreciate your time. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Nick. I appreciate it. And yeah, free to chat in the comments and stuff like that. And yeah, if anyone has any questions or any worries, just fire them, and I'm happy to help in the group.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Rich.
All right. No worries. Cheers.